All right. As promised, we're here. You know, Michael Goodwin writes for the Post. He wrote an excellent article called "The New York Times Obama Cheerleading Harms the Nation." And he specifically addressed a lot of his complaints to the Times, but he wasn't. I think his concept is representative across the entire spectrum of the press as a generalization. And I don't think it's unfair for us to use the broad brush to generalize the Ministry of Propaganda, because as an organized mainstream media, and I know that the borders of that are a little fuzzy, but the truth of the matter is, when you look at who owns the industry and media, there's about 6 or 8 companies that basically control everything you see, everything you hear, everything you learn. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is not a good place for America to be. You know, we should have the capability and the wherewithal to have enough information to be able to formulate our own opinions. And this article in the Post hits the nail on the head. Goodwin is on fire in his review of how sycophantic the New York Times has been as the, quote, official arm of the Ministry of Propaganda that's pumping up and promoting the Obama regime. Now, I grant you, these papers do compete, so you know there's probably some argument to be made that, you know, they're throwing their opponents under the bus, and it's okay. That's where you wear your critical thinking hat. You go into it with eyes wide open, and you say, okay, I'm going to read this article in its totality, and then I'm going to make my determination based on all of the available information I can gather. And that's not just from one article or 2 or 5 or even 10. Study to show yourself approved, right? This guy opens this article in a pretty good way. Poor Barack Obama. When I first read that, I had to laugh out loud. Ending his 5th year as the world's most powerful man, he is running out of scapegoats and fairy tales. Blaming George Bush has lost its punch, and the Obamacare debacle is shredding the myth that he is competent and honest. Still, before he rides off into the sunset of self-pity and low poll ratings, he ought to invite his remaining friends over for a heart-to-heart. That way he can tell the New York Times that its fanatical support does him no favors. Instead, it feeds his arrogance and reinforces his belief that he can solve any problem with any speech. The unflattering truth doesn't stand a chance until it is too late. Not that the president would admit to any of that, of course, but the Obama protection racket, led by the New York Times, cuts both ways. It's a key reason he has defied political gravity for so long, and also why he is now in deep trouble. As watchdogs become lapdogs, the presidential bubble grew impenetrable, isolating him from ordinary Americans and the trickle-down pain of his policies. From the broadcast networks to MSNBC and most large papers, Obama got the benefit of every doubt. The double standards were a daily disgrace so routine, they mostly provoked a shrug instead of outrage. The Obamacare debacle is the exception that proves the rule. Wall-to-wall complaints are forcing the media to report that the law's website is a lemon and that its rules are causing millions of people to lose insurance plans they liked. The mainstream media is acting only because the story is too big to ignore. Had it been mildly skeptical sooner, it could have exposed the law's destructive rules and prevented the disaster. Yet the Times, especially its editorial page, remains his most devoted cheerleader. The latest example is embarrassing enough to make even a gray lady blush. After the president's repeated promise that if you like your health care plan, you can keep it was proven false, the editorial page tried to clean up this mess. On November 2nd, it charged that Republicans were stoking, quote, consumer fears and confusion, end quote, by highlighting reports of people losing insurance. Then came the cover-up. Mr. Obama clearly misspoke when he made those promises, the editorial said. Before dismissing the problem as an overblown controversy. The misspoke defense set off a firestorm, and even the paper's gentle public editor suggested it was too kind. Naturally, the editors defended their decision not to accuse the president of an outright lie. Yet even Obama concluded he had to apologize. His recognition of the uproar will result in changes, if only because Senate Democrats are now running for their lives. The episode graphically illustrates how the Times has harmed the nation by reflexively protecting Obama, facts be damned. Instead of just expressing its own liberal view, the editorial page serves as the propaganda arm of the administration, the Jay Carney of print media. Its daily drumbeat of shrill partisanship leaves it indistinguishable from Dem Party hacks who spend their waking hours demonizing Republicans. The ritual is distressingly clear. Any White House claim that a critic is, quote, political, sends the Times to war. The news pages play along by treating Obama's every utterance as if it was sacred, thus crowding out the facts that don't fit his agenda. This power to shape the narrative is not limited to its own pages. The newspaper's brand still commands significant cachet that stories it downplays, such as the Benghazi terror attack or the IRS targeting of conservative groups, quickly disappear from the other media as well. And that lets the president off the hook and keeps much of the public in the dark. At least that was the pattern until now. Obamacare is such a direct hit on so many people that it could change everything. If predictions are accurate, the tens of millions of families will lose their current insurance policies, but Obama and the Democratic lemmings will be seriously damaged. The lapdogs and cheerleaders won't get off that easy either. Not when their crime has been covering up his. Boom. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth of this is that the media, and the media at large, and I'm talking about all of the news media that you see on television, there is not a single network news media that you see on television today that is giving you the raw, unvarnished truth. Sometimes by commission, most times by omission. What's the difference? Well, the idea of commission means, like MSNBC, what they're actually doing is sitting there and twisting the facts to give you the impression that something is different than it really is. Omission is Communist News Network, and Fox News for that matter, who will sit there and literally avoid stories and fill it up with pabulum and chalk to make up the difference. How do I know that? Well, perfect example is Common Core. The idea of Common Core is so destructive on its face with that when Americans recognize somewhere down the road of the damage that Common Core has wreaked upon our nation, they will be infuriated. The problem is that generations of our children will be indoctrinated to the point of no restoration. And Fox News is completely avoiding it. You almost barely ever hear a blip about the term Common Core, yet the nation is up in arms about it. And on the other side of the fence, most of the media doesn't talk about it either, including Communist News and MSNBC and ABC, CBS, NBC, blah, 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 blah. So that's an act of omission. They refuse to tell you what's really happening. And that is an act of commission to let you be misled by omission. So either way you look at it, the truth of the matter is, and by the way, the reason Fox News doesn't do that, because a lot of conservative folks watch Fox News, and they think that that's the only straight-out media out there. I got to tell you, you're being misled there, too. The leaders of Fox News, Ailes and Murdoch, are both deeply up to their elbows in Common Core. Yeah. That's why you're not hearing about it, because they're not going to throw their own policy under the bus, which shows you that their integrity is lacking as well. The only place you're hearing about it is in alternative media. And I grant you, remember I said earlier in this particular broadcast topic that the lines of what constitutes mainstream media are a little rough around the edges. They're a little fuzzy. That's because, ladies and gentlemen, the alternative media is becoming such a big marketplace and stealing such market share from the mainstream media that they're actually becoming mainstream themselves. Yes, they are. Now, does that mean that they are capitulating? I don't know. I mean, it's impossible to keep track of them all. That's for you to decide, wearing your critical thinking cap. Spin your propeller and determine what's legitimate and what's not. But I can tell you this. The mainstream media is actively working and engaged in either one, obtaining your misinformation and designing and creating it, or they are directly involved in refusing to give you the truth for fear that you'll take action with that knowledge. The simple truth is, there is no mainstream media that is willing to support the real true concepts of why this country was created the way it was. None of them are actually standing on the pillars of the Constitution. None of them are holding this administration accountable. None of them. And none of them are also truly giving you the real information that you need in order to make those decisions about who to support and what policies to support. They bring on endless pundits who sit there and talk about talking points and kind of indoctrinate you into a way of thinking that is not accurate. It's only a transference, like a Spock Vulcan mind meld. It's a transference of their opinion into your mind. At least Spock could only read your mind. These guys have the ability to actually push the idea into your head. That's why I encourage so strongly that you look for alternative media sources. Because you cannot trust what these people are promoting and promulgating. They're feeding you lies, misrepresentation, misdirection, and pabulum to keep you calm. You know, I watch. The only thing I watch on television is news. Period. End of argument. I never watch sitcoms. I can't take it. To me, it is so. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard to watch that kind of thing. Because it's so canned and it's obviously so faked and it's so laden with bias and the idea of indoctrinating you into thinking one way or the other. It's been so infiltrated by the progressivist and liberal thinking and the political correctness and all that. It tastes like vomit in my mouth. So I can't take it. The only thing I watch on television is news. Period. And I watch a lot of different channels because I try to get an overall understanding of where they're each coming from. Time from time, of course, I latch on to Communist News Network. I have to observe what they're up to. And I got to tell you, I find it so disturbing because they call themselves the most trusted name in news. And the last thing they give you is news. I mean, they're giving you news if what you're interested in is, you know, some article that has really nothing to do with, it's more public interest type stories than they are with investigative reporting. There's no investigative reporting going on there in any way, shape, or form at all. I mean, there's plenty of stuff about, you know, the happy-go-lucky story about some new medical device they came out with and that kind of thing. But when it comes to those things that affect your life in the political arena, they're bare naked. Literally bare naked. At best, they give it a glancing blow, if they even glance at it. And when they do give it to you, the pundits that they bring on who are in support of their own agenda, I mean, if you were to think that if that was the only news source you had, you would think that this was, some kind of utopian fantasy land we're living in. The truth is far more stark and far more dangerous and far more sinister than they would have you to believe. They're all guilty of it, but some are more guilty than others. I mean, there's one thing I can say about MSNBC. I disagree with almost everything that they stand for. But the one thing that I can say about MSNBC is that they don't try to hide the fact that they're biased. They come right out and say it. And I've got to give them credit, at least for the integrity to stand up and say, for that aspect of integrity that allows them to stand up and say, we're cheering for this administration because we think leftism and progressivism and big government are best. Let somebody else make your decisions for you. They at least openly come out and say that. Nobody else has the courage and or the honesty to tell their viewers what's really going on. Now, I'll grant you, MSNBC has a pretty horrific, ranking or viewership. But that's because, to be honest with you, I think we are overly influenced by a tiny minority of true leftist progressivists. It's like the idea of all of the gay rights thing. I mean, assuming for argument's sake, the numbers are accurate, and I've heard they're 10 to 11% that is the LGBT community or whatever, right? That's a fairly small minority to have such massive effect on our entire society. Really is. And you can say the same thing for Hispanics and immigration. You can say the same thing for blacks and the issue of racial discrimination. I mean, blacks accordingly are at, I think it's 18 or 19 or maybe 20% or something like that. And Hispanics are a little bit above that now. So why is it that our entire society, the other 80%, are forced to accept the ideas that go beyond fairness and go towards actually leaning in the direction of unfairness, but the other way? Let me explain that one to me. Because the media is propping it up and supporting it and driving it into your face all the time. They're not giving you an opportunity to see an unvarnished reality. They're only giving you the opportunity to see their viewpoint and how they want you to think. The truth is, immigration is not good for America. Not this kind of immigration with this kind of a comprehension. It's good for America in the sense that we want immigrants to come here, but we want them to come here under our terms, not their terms. The truth is, everybody ought to be saying the same thing. What's in the best interest of America is that we stop the bleeding and seal the border. After that, we can have any discussion you want. Why can't we have that? Because the people who are giving you the information don't believe that there should be any borders. They don't want borders. And they're so drunk on the Kool-Aid of this can't we all just get along mentality, kumbaya, that, the truth is they're never going to give you a true and unvarnished look at the issue. They cover up the fact that by allowing literally tens of millions of illegals in here, you're impacting the workforce of the people who were born here and who, quite frankly, pay the freight. They lie to you and tell you that immigration's good for you. I could say the same things about any other topic. I mean, just using that as an example. And I'm not trying to throw any one group under the bus. All I'm saying is this. How is it that a small minority of radical leftists have hijacked the entire nation of the United States? The media. That's how. They've got the soapbox. They've got the loudspeaker. And when they're standing up on their soapbox with a bullhorn, they can reach more people than you can locked in the phone booth that you have been placed into. The three people around you can hear you yelling and screaming through the glass, but everybody else is deafened to your truth. And the mainstream media, they've got an entire sound system that they can be heard for blocks. You know what? It's up to you to identify those things that are truth. The only way you're going to do that is by investigating and understanding and looking and paying attention to what's going on around you. To be situationally aware so that when you do hear a story that leaves you kind of scratching your head doing that tilted head dog thing, that you recognize that there is an alternative solution out there or a truth that's being withheld from you. In order to be objective, and the only way that you're ever going to be able to make an informed decision is to be objective, you have to study both sides of the issue. Maybe 8 sides of the issue. Maybe the multitudinous facets of the diamond of the issue. We don't all have to be, rocket scientists, and we don't all have to be experts on everything. But we have to be well-rounded enough in our knowledge that we're able to jump from topic to conversation to topic so that we can have a well-rounded view that doesn't come from this myopic perspective that we refuse to allow ourselves to reach beyond. I posted something up on our Facebook page the other day that somebody disagreed with because one of the links I put at the bottom of the story was from a media organization he didn't agree with. He said he thought it was thin. And the truth is, that just happened to be the story I posted. But that wasn't the entire context of the story. That story was put together, and the reason I did that topic, and it was all about this issue of what's going on with nuclear weapons and the fact that this was related to the article of what I did last week with how Russia and China smell blood in the water. And they're circling around America. And I stand by that. I'm telling you right now, I've gone out there and read lots and lots and lots of articles, but I'm limited on Facebook to being able to post 1 or 2. My job is not to get you to reiterate and absorb and adopt my opinion. My job is to motivate you to say, wow, I didn't know that. Let me go do some homework on it. That's the goal. Don't adopt my opinion. Formulate your own. Don't even believe what I say. Don't believe what I think. Don't believe what I believe. Believe what you believe. Just make sure that you've got a foundation for it that's rock solid from top to bottom. If you've got that, you win. If you don't even know you've lost. You may not necessarily agree with my assertions, and you may not agree with the conclusions that I draw. I don't say you have to. I do say that you should take what I submit out there, and it's my Facebook page, so I put up there what I think is appropriate. But that doesn't mean that that's what you should think is appropriate. The truth is that, if you really, truly are interested in knowledge, You take everything that you learn as a starting point to learn more. It should only open up another door that suddenly opens it's the door to the next library, which is full of volumes of knowledge. If I post a story up there that you don't like because you don't agree with the concept, I mean, or the source of it. I mean, he said, this is ridiculous. Found you through another group, but if this is the kind of crap you're going to post, you won't last long on my feed. Try some real sources. Well, guess what? There are tons and tons of sources out there. My job is not to tell you what to think. My job is to get you to say, wow, if that's the case, I'm going to go do some homework on my own. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between critical thinking and the crap that the mass media is feeding you, and this administration's been feeding you, and the 10 previous administrations before that have been feeding America. That's the difference between what your kids are going to learn in Common Core and what they've learned in the past. I'm not asking you to make me your source. I'm just throwing out the nugget of gold out there so that you can pick it up and say, wow, where did he find this? Let me do some homework and investigation, see if I can find some more. You see, if you're not willing to do that, then that tells me that you're willing to parrot someone else's opinion and adopt that as your own. And that tells me that you will never have a good foundational understanding of where we are, how we got here, what we do, why we do it, and what we should do to continue to move forward positively. Remember that what's in your best interest as an average regular guy is, for the most part, what's in the nation's best interest. I'm going to leave you with a quote that's not really relevant to this, but I thought it matters because it kind of puts into perspective the issue of our relationship in the overall scheme of things. And it kind of brings us back down and grounds us out. And I think if more Americans followed this mantra, this idea, this concept, they would be a little bit more willing to think outside the box that they have put themselves in. They would be willing to look at alternatives, other ideas and concepts, and look at them objectively without having to say, I reject everything else I've ever believed before because of this new piece of information. That's not how we do things. Science doesn't work that way. They take every new snippet of information that comes in and they add to that knowledge. But this quote from William Ellery is may not be the most appropriate quote, but I liked it and I thought it was relevant to this situation. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion, to be worthy, not respectable and wealthy, not rich, to study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars and birds, to babes and sages, with open heart, to bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. Some of that is directly relevant to the idea of moving through this world and knowing what our place is and how we're supposed to interact. It's okay to be content with small means. America has gotten into this idea that you can't live by small means. You can't seek elegance. You've got to seek luxury. Everybody's got to live like a king. How about being refined? Refined in your concepts and your ideas, rather than to be whimmy on fashion. What's in fashion? What's in vogue? And to be worthy. You don't have to be, you don't have to always be at the forefront of the pack. We chase the almighty dollar and sacrifice everything else in our lives in order to accomplish that. And most of our motivations and a lot of our ideas and beliefs are motivated and directed by that. How about studying hard to understand who we are, where we are in this place, and what we can do to change things for our own and the nation's best interest? And I don't mean that selfishly. To study hard and to think quietly, to speak gently, to act frankly, with an open heart, to bear it all cheerfully, do it bravely, and do it bravely. Remember that. That should be our symphony. That should be what our goals are. To improve ourselves while not necessarily trampling on everybody else to get there. To be counted, to be fearless, to be courageous, to be fierce, and to speak out even when our voice shakes. Thanks for joining with us today. You've been listening to America's Voice. My name is Mike Evans. I'm the host here, and I thank you for your attendance with us this morning. God bless you and have a great day. See you tomorrow morning. You can find us on the web by visiting us at americasvoicenow.org. You can find our Facebook page at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. And then you can find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. You can also find and download our audio podcast at Spreaker.com/America's Voice Now. Spreaker is Spreaker. Spreaker.com/America's Voice Now. And download a podcast onto your phone or an iPod or something like that, and you can listen to it at your own leisure. Thanks for joining with us today. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless.